Okay, so you want to own a casino. Not play one, not gamble at one. Own one. Your name on the marquee, your logo on the chips. A private elevator that goes straight to a penthouse suite you'll rarely have time to sleep in. Whales flying in on your comp jet. A floor that never stops making noise. A vault in the basement that fills up every single night whether you're watching or not. That's the picture. That's what the movies sell you. Here's what's actually going on underneath that picture. The first thing you need to understand is that a casino is not really a gambling business. It's a real estate, hospitality, and compliance business that happens to have a gambling floor bolted to the middle of it, and that floor is the only part of the building actually guaranteed to make money on a mathematical level. Everything else, the hotel, the restaurants, the shows, the pool, mostly exists to keep a gambler's body inside your building for as many hours as possible, because every additional hour on your property is another hour of exposure to a game engineered by law to take a small percentage of everything wagered. So why do people still want in? Spectacle, mostly. A casino resort is one of the only businesses on earth where you can build something that looks like a small city, put your name on top of it, and watch tourists photograph it from across the highway. It's also a cash business in a world that's gone almost entirely digital, which carries its own old-world mystique. And there's raw scale. The largest resorts move more people through their doors in a single weekend than most small towns have residents. That's the appeal. Now let's talk about what it costs to actually do this. First, you need permission, and this is where casino ownership departs from almost every other business on this list. You are not just applying for a license. You are personally submitting to one of the most invasive background investigations in American commercial life. Every individual with a meaningful ownership stake, and in most states that threshold is shockingly low, has to file a personal history disclosure covering decades of financial records, tax returns, past business relationships, and every place you've lived. Investigators from the state gaming board go through it line by line. They interview former business partners. They pull your banking history. The standard the regulator is applying isn't, "Did you break the law?" It's suitability, a deliberately vague legal term that essentially means the state can deny you a license for almost any reason connected to your character, associations, or financial history, with very limited room to appeal. This process routinely takes 6 months to over a year, and the licensing fees alone, before a single slot machine is plugged in, can run into the millions once you include the mandatory investigation costs, which the applicant pays for regardless of whether the license is approved or denied. And if you want to operate in more than one state, you do this entire process again, separately in every single jurisdiction, because gaming licenses do not transfer across state lines. Nevada does not care that New Jersey already approved you. New Jersey does not care that Nevada did either. Now assume you clear licensing. Time to build. A Las Vegas Strip-caliber integrated resort, meaning a casino floor plus a hotel tower plus restaurants, retail, and a convention space, is not a casino with a hotel attached. It's closer to building a small vertical city, and the price tag reflects that. Modern mega-resorts on the Strip have run anywhere from roughly $1 billion for a mid-sized property up toward $3 billion or more for the largest ones, once you include the tower, the infrastructure beneath it, and the years of pre-opening costs that pile up before a single guest checks in. And here's the trap that has killed more casino projects than bad luck at the tables ever has. Construction timelines for resorts of this size routinely run 3 to 5 years, and the number you budgeted on day one is never the number you pay on opening day. Labor costs shift, material costs shift, and the entire project is usually financed with enormous amounts of debt serviced from day one of construction, long before there's a single dollar of gaming revenue coming in to pay for any of it. A project that pencils out perfectly when the loan is signed can be underwater by the time the ribbon is cut, and unlike a house, you can't just pause construction on a half-built resort tower without the carrying costs quietly destroying you while you wait. Now the part everyone actually pictures. The gaming floor. A single slot machine, new from a manufacturer like IGT or Light & Wonder, costs somewhere in the range of $15,000 to $25,000, and a serious strip-scale floor needs thousands of them. Table games are cheaper per unit. A blackjack or craps table runs a few $1,000s, but each one requires something slot machines mostly don't. A live, trained, background check dealer on shift, every single hour the table is open, plus a pit boss supervising several tables at once, plus surveillance watching every hand from the ceiling. That surveillance operation, what the industry calls the eye in the sky, is not optional and not cheap. A modern casino floor is blanketed in networked cameras feeding a windowless surveillance room staffed around the clock, because state regulators require continuous recorded coverage of every table, every cage transaction, and every count room procedure, with footage retained for a set period in case of a dispute or an investigation. This is one of the only industries where the government mandates you spend heavily on watching your own customers and your own employees simultaneously. Here's the mechanism that makes this entire business work, and it's worth sitting with because it's genuinely different from almost any other business model. A casino doesn't need to guess whether it'll make money on any single hand or spin. It knows mathematically in advance. Every game on the floor has a built-in house edge, a percentage the house is statistically guaranteed to keep over a large enough number of plays. Blackjack might run under 1% with perfect basic strategy. A slot machine might run anywhere from 5 to 15% depending on how it's programmed. Individual players win constantly. That's the entire point. But across the volume of an entire floor, over an entire year, the math doesn't care who wins tonight. The industry's internal language reflects this. Handle is the total amount wagered. Drop is the cash and markers that actually go into the table or the machine. Win is what the house actually keeps after paying out. A casino's finance department isn't tracking whether Tuesday was lucky or unlucky for the house. They're tracking whether the actual win rate is tracking close enough to the theoretical win rate, because a gap between the two in either direction is usually a sign of either a cheating problem or an equipment problem, and both get investigated immediately. Now here's the part almost nobody outside the industry understands, and it's the single most important structural fact in modern casino economics. The entire high-end business runs on a tiny number of extraordinarily wealthy customers, and the casino spends staggering amounts of money making sure those specific people never have a reason to gamble anywhere else. This is the comp economy. A casino calculates something called a player's theoretical loss, essentially what the math says a given player is expected to lose based on their average bet size and hours played, and then gives back a meaningful chunk of that theoretical loss in the form of free rooms, free meals, free private jet transport, and sometimes direct credit extended against future play. For a true high roller, someone betting tens of thousands of dollars a hand, casinos will comp private villas, personal chefs, and helicopter transfers, because losing a fraction of that guest's theoretical loss back in comps is still wildly profitable if it keeps that guest playing at your tables instead of a competitor's 3 miles down the road. This is also where junket operators enter the picture, particularly in Asian gaming markets. A junket operator brings in groups of high-net-worth players, extends credit to them personally, and takes a cut of the casino's revenue from that group in exchange. Sounds like a clean arrangement. It has also, at various points, collapsed spectacularly, when junket operators themselves turned out to be running illegal underground banking and credit operations, forcing regulators to crack down hard in casinos that depended heavily on junket-driven revenue to watch a meaningful slice of their business evaporate almost overnight. Compliance is its own permanent cost center, and it's bigger than most new owners expect. Casinos are cash-intensive businesses by nature, which makes them a natural target for money laundering, so federal law requires strict currency transaction reporting for any cash transaction over $10,000, alongside broader anti-money laundering obligations under the Bank Secrecy Act. Getting this wrong isn't a slap on the wrist. Casino operators, including some of the largest and most recognizable names in the industry, have paid tens of millions of dollars in federal penalties for compliance failures tied to exactly this kind of reporting. A compliance department, internal auditors, and a legal team dedicated purely to regulatory risk isn't a nice-to-have. It's one of the largest fixed cost centers on the property, and it exists purely to keep the license you spent a year and millions of dollars earning. Layer on top of that the daily grind. Dealers, pit bosses, hosts, hospitality staff, security, valet, housekeeping across a hotel tower that might run thousands of rooms, entertainment production costs for the headline shows meant to pull tourists in the door, and utility costs for a building that runs climate control and lighting 24 hours a day, every day, because a casino floor never technically closes. This is where the story gets interesting because on the Strip specifically, the gaming floor is no longer even the largest single revenue source at many major resorts. Room revenue, food and beverage, nightclub and day club cover charges, retail leasing, and convention business now make up a majority of total resort revenue at several of the biggest properties, with gaming revenue as the anchor that pulls people through the door rather than the main event on the income statement. The casino floor is the thing that makes the whole ecosystem irresistible enough to fill 4,500 hotel rooms at premium rates, sell out a residency show, and lease retail space to luxury brands at rents that would be absurd anywhere that wasn't attached to a casino. And just like the airline loyalty programs and the ranch tax exemptions in other versions of this story, casinos have built their own version of the same trick, the Players Club. Every card swipe at a slot machine or every hand tracked at a table feeds a database that scores a guest value down to the dollar, and that data drives everything from room upgrades to free show tickets to which guests get a personal host calling them before a big weekend. It costs the casino almost nothing to generate, and it is one of the most powerful tools the industry has for keeping a customer loyal to one brand across multiple cities. The exact same logic that turned airlines into marketing arms of credit card companies. If you want to understand what casino economics actually looks like from the inside, look at what happened to some of the most confident bets in the industry's recent history. Atlantic City's Revel Casino cost well over $2 billion to build and opened with enormous fanfare as the market's most ambitious modern resort. It filed for bankruptcy within about a year of opening and closed entirely within roughly 2 years, undone by a combination of a market that was already oversaturated with casino supply, heavy debt service, and a location that never generated the volume of high-value visitors the original financial model assumed. Around the same era, the Trump Taj Mahal opened in Atlantic City after a construction budget that ran past $1 billion, financed with high-yield debt at steep interest rates, and it filed for bankruptcy within roughly a year of opening. In both cases, the buildings were spectacular. The math underneath them wasn't. Debt service on a casino resort doesn't pause because the market got more competitive after you broke ground, and a resort financed on the assumption of a certain nightly win rate can be structurally doomed the moment that assumption turns out to be too optimistic. Compare that to the operators who got it right. The Las Vegas resorts that survived and compounded over decades did it by diversifying revenue hard beyond the gaming floor, building loyalty ecosystems that kept guests coming back regardless of a single bad quarter at the tables, and expanding cautiously enough that each new property was financially proven before the next one broke ground. The same lesson that separated the private school networks that survived from the ones that collapsed under their own expansion. Let's run this honestly, the way you'd have to if you were the one signing the checks. The optimistic case: you build or acquire a well-located resort with a strong existing brand and player database. Your gaming floor runs close to its theoretical win rate consistently because your surveillance and compliance systems are tight. Your high-value players stay loyal because your comp program and personal hosts keep them coming back instead of trying a competitor. Non-gaming revenue, rooms, food, entertainment, retail, carries a majority of the property's income, giving you a cushion that isn't purely dependent on the tables. In this world, the casino floor is less the whole business and more the engine that makes everything else around it wildly profitable. The realistic case: a new competitor opens 2 exits down the highway with a bigger tower and a flashier show. Your market gets saturated faster than the original financial model assumed. A junket relationship you depended on for high-end volume collapses when the operator turns out to be running something illegal underneath it. Your debt service, fixed the day you signed the construction loan, doesn't care that visitation is down 12% this year. Suddenly you're not counting the house edge working quietly in your favor every night. You're counting the interest payments coming due on a building that cost more than $1 billion to construct, the way Revel and the Taj Mahal both did. The difference between those two outcomes isn't a rounding error. It's the difference between a resort that compounds for 40 years and one that doesn't survive its own second birthday. And the entire industry sits on that knife's edge permanently because the house edge only guarantees you win over an enormous number of trials, and a casino resort's fixed costs, the debt, the payroll, the compliance department, don't wait around for the math to catch up. So if you still want to own a casino, understand what you're actually buying. You're not buying a gambling business. You're buying a capital-intensive hospitality and real estate operation, wrapped in one of the most heavily regulated licenses in American commerce, that happens to have a mathematically guaranteed profit engine sitting in the middle of it. The house always wins eventually. The question that actually decides whether you get rich or go bankrupt is whether you can survive long enough, with enough discipline and enough cash reserve, to let eventually actually arrive.